Welcome back, you beautiful disaster. The one they wrote off. The one they buried under rumors and pity. You were supposed to disappear quietly, fade like smoke, crumble like dust. But here you are, still breathing, still burning, unrecognizable. And that's the point, isn't it? They thought your silence meant surrender. They mistook your stillness for defeat. But you weren't finished. You were transforming. Because silence, in your world, isn't weakness. It's surveillance. You studied every laugh that echoed after your fall, every handshake that hit a blade, every eye that looked away when you bled. And while they slept, you rebuilt yourself, molecule by molecule, scar by scar. You learned how to breathe in fire, how to smile through venom, how to turn pain into design. They call it survival. You call it evolution. You didn't crawl out of hell. You redesigned it. And now you stand here, carved from the very flames that were meant to erase you. The world doesn't recognize you anymore. Good. It shouldn't. Because you didn't return to be remembered. You returned to rewrite the ending. They thought the chapter closed. You rewrote the genre. They buried you, not in dirt, but in jokes. Not in graves, but in gossip. Your name became their entertainment. Your pain, their weekend special. They called it moving on. You called it murder with applause. One by one, the faces you trusted vanished. Their promises turned into echoes. Their loyalty, conditional. It expired the moment you stopped being useful. You remember the silence, don't you? The way they watched you fall, not with pity, but curiosity. They didn't help. They recorded. They didn't care. They commented. Your collapse became a circus, and they sold tickets at the gate. They said, "You'll get over it." But what they meant was, "We hope you disappear." And you almost did. For a while, you believed the lie, that your worth was tied to their applause, that maybe you deserved the fall. But deep down, under all that wreckage, something refused to die. Something ancient, something silent, something calculating. You stopped asking why. You started remembering who. You learned to listen to the room, to the tone, the hesitation, the twitch behind every smile. You stored every betrayal like archived evidence. Every laugh, every lie, every whisper, labeled, dated, filed away. Because even then, even in ruin, your instincts whispered one thing. This isn't the end. It's just discovery. They thought they buried you under laughter. But you were the ghost haunting your own obituary. And the joke, they laughed too early, before checking if the corpse was breathing. At some point, the screaming stopped, the tears dried, and you stopped begging the world to understand. You realized pain wasn't a punishment, it was a curriculum. Every betrayal, a lesson. Every silence, a chapter. Every scar, a signature. You stopped reacting. You started recording. While they laughed, you listened. While they celebrated your downfall, you studied the science of fire. You noticed how quickly loyalty melts under heat, how masks slip when you have nothing left to offer. You learned that empathy is seasonal and love a conditional contract. You watched, you memorized, you archived. Your silence became strategy. You discovered that people reveal everything when they think you're finished. Their arrogance spoke louder than your screams ever could. So, you turned their confidence into evidence. You started collecting receipts, not for revenge, but for reference. Because the only difference between a victim and a villain is documentation. One cries, the other catalogs. You weren't healing, you were analyzing. You dissected the anatomy of betrayal with surgical precision. You mapped patterns, motives, behaviors, until the chaos made sense. And when it finally did, you smiled. Not because the pain was gone, but because it was organized, structured, controlled, filed neatly in the archive of your evolution. They thought your silence was surrender, but it was surveillance. You weren't recovering. You were redesigning. You didn't heal. You adapted your wounds into weapons. There comes a moment when survival stops being enough, when breathing feels like begging, when endurance starts to sound like an insult. That's when the storm shifts. You stop surviving and start designing. You no longer crawl to escape the fire. You build with it. Every scar becomes blueprints. Every scar whispers instructions. And for the first time, the pain doesn't scare you. It obeys you. They wanted a ghost. But what they got was an architect. You began constructing in silence, brick by brick, thought by thought, sin by sin. You weren't chasing closure anymore. You were building an empire out of ashes. You learned how to weaponize stillness, how to walk into rooms that once broke you and own the air inside them, how to speak without words and still dominate the dialogue. The ones who mocked you, they started to stutter. The ones who laughed, they started to hide. Because nothing terrifies a traitor more than the sound of footsteps. They thought they'd buried. You turned the battlefield into a chessboard. Every lie, a pawn, every doubt, a rook, every loss, a piece you sacrificed for checkmate. You became the verdict they feared, the evidence they can't erase. Not vengeance, not chaos, just precision. You don't scream anymore. You don't beg. You smile, and that's enough to shake their world. They don't ask if you're okay anymore. They ask if you're coming for them next. You reappeared quietly. No thunder, no warning, just presence. And that was enough to make the ground remember you. They saw your face and froze. Same eyes, same voice, but something was missing. Or maybe something was added. Because what stood before them wasn't you. It was the aftermath of their sins. You became the rumor they tried to kill, the echo that refused to fade, the shadow that learned how to speak. They can't look you in the eye anymore, can they? Because the reflection staring back at them isn't a person, it's a verdict. Their guilt lives inside your silence now. Their fear trembles inside your calm. You walk into rooms, and the temperature changes. You don't say a word, yet every whisper dies midair. Because your energy speaks louder than your old screams ever could. You used to beg for peace. Now, peace feels too small for you. You burned in their fire, and rose wearing its smoke like armor. Your soul no longer pleads, it prosecutes. Every glance, every pause, every heartbeat feels like a cross-examination. You've become untouchable. Not because you're above pain, but because you became it. You made peace with the monster they created and gave it your name. Now they whisper in fear, wondering if you're still human, or something they resurrected by mistake. Survival didn't make you stronger. It made you sacred. They keep asking the same question, don't they? How did you survive? As if it was luck, as if mercy had anything to do with it. You didn't survive. You engineered your resurrection, piece by piece, sin by sin, decision by decision. You turned despair into blueprint. You built divinity out of disaster. The world threw its worst at you, and you made it your workshop. Every betrayal became a brick, every scar, a signature, every downfall, an invention. Now they stand there, blinking under your light, trying to recognize the monster they helped design. They can't decide whether to clap or run. Because deep down, they know the truth. You were never meant to make it. You were meant to remind them what happens when the forgotten stop forgiving. So when they whisper, "How did you survive?" you smile, that slow, dangerous grin, and say, "I didn't. I died." Right where they thought I'd beg. And as the storm clears, you walk away. Calm, silent, immortal. Because survival wasn't the miracle. The miracle is that you made it look easy.